Hello everybody, it's Atheist for the Cause here with another video, and I wanted to talk about the French elections since they're coming up tomorrow, um, and we'll see what happens. But Marine Le Pen and I forgot how to say his name, but it's Emmanuel Macron, I think, are in the runoff election, and both having been in the top two with it was Fillon and Melancon were the two other close ones, but they were 3 and 4. So I just wanted to explain or give my insight on the French elections and what's going to happen, because I think some people are going to be surprised. And when I say some people are going to be surprised, I think that Macron's actually going to win. And I know polls have been wrong in the past, and polls were wrong with Brexit, and I accurately predicted Brexit. Polls were wrong with Trump, and I accurately predicted Trump. But here I'm going with the polls because there is a lot of evidence that Macron's going to win, and it's not going to be close. But there are some interesting takeaways too. It's a loss isn't necessarily just a loss, so can do some analyzing of that. But if you look at the first round results, Macron had 23.8% and Le Pen had 21.5%. And then you go to Fillon, who had 19.9%, and Melancon, who had 19.6%. Okay? And look how close. Here were the first round polling averages, and at the end, look at Macron, who came in with 23.9%, I think it was. He's now at he was polling at 24%. Le Pen, who came in at 21 point whatever percent, was actually polling at 22.1%. So Le Pen was actually polling higher than she actually did in the end. So not by much, but it just shows you, Fillon, I think, was 19.9% and came in at 19.6%, and Melancon was 19.9%, I think, and came in at 18.9%. So it just shows you how close all of them were within a percent. Even Heyman was within a percent. So since these were so close, we can't expect a huge change. I mean, why would the first round elections be close to the polls and then the runoff elections be completely wildly off? That makes no sense to me. So if they were going to rig them, wouldn't they rig them from the start? And especially in such a close contested election. So to show you where they are now in the runoff, Macron's at 62% and Le Pen's at 38%. And now look, like, it's been that way the entire time. I mean, the closest it's been is like something like barely under 20%, basically. So there's, in my opinion, no way that Le Pen comes back and wins this. But she's done very well. She brought her party back from the dead, basically. And this is a party that hasn't been very successful in the past. And now it's a leading party in France. There's no shame in that. Just because you come up short, when you're trying to bring a party back, it's usually a multi-cycle event that has to happen. So now she can either run again or next cycle, or she can pass the baton to someone else who maybe has a better face, or maybe is more well liked. Le Pen has some baggage with her family and all of that. So but don't expect Le Pen to win this. So anyways. And the other thing is, in terms of my personal selfishness, I want France to leave because I can't stand the EU. But in terms of what's good for France, if we look at their economy, it's probably best for them to stay in the EU, at least for now, because if they leave, their economy is really going to take a hit, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan with how they've structured their economy. And what they really need to do, in my opinion, is try to influence the EU to change how they operate. And maybe they gotta, the leaders of the EU got a shock, and you can drive some changes to be more democratic and give more ability to each country to protect their own borders and make decisions for themselves. Because in the end, what's good for each individual country is good for the EU. If they want to force these policies onto each country that is generally bad for these countries, then what's going to happen is the EU will benefit for a little while, and then things will start collapsing because these aren't actually ideal conditions. And, eventually something has to give, and it'll get really bad, and, France or other countries will leave down the line. So, but this is not a UK situation. This is not a Brexit situation. The UK they maintain their pound. It's very strong. I think, they're one of the strongest economies. I don't want to say right offhand and be wrong, but yeah, they're definitely one of the strongest economies in the world. And France is as well. I think actually the UK is the second best economy in Europe. So France is number 3, but if you look at how it's structured, it's not very good. And apparently it's 7th largest by nominal figures and 10th largest by PPP figures, and the 3rd largest in Europe, according to Wikipedia. So if we look at the economic sectors, a lot of what they do, they do some industry, where there's telecommunications. It's basically, this is a lot of military stuff is where this is coming from, along with some other stuff, but largely military. And then you get in your energy, and it's a lot of, first of all, energy is very hard to transport. So when you export energy, you want to export it very close to where you are. The further you export it, the more costly it is, and the less energy actually gets there. So it's not like other products, Think of it almost like food that spoils. So, so energy is iffy, and they've developed heavily in nuclear. So then you have agriculture, which again is kind of hard to export, and energy and agriculture that would allow them to be sufficient to a large extent if they did leave the EU, but being self-sufficient isn't enough to have a solid economy. And France already has issues. They have like over 10% unemployment rate. It's ridiculous. So then you have tourism. And this is something that's going to continue to take a hit with all of their homelessness and Islamism influence. That the more this happens, gangs are starting to take over and stuff. The more this happens, the more people are going to shy away from going to France. And they're depending on being the number 1 tourist destination in the world. That's just not going to continue in long term if they don't get their civil situation under control. And the reason it's as bad as it is because of the EU. So That's why you're starting to hopefully see why I think they should remain in the EU, but they need to get changes done. Um, and then, I had mentioned the military earlier, but here we have the arms industry is also big for them. So all of this stuff is mainly either for them or you're bringing tourists in, which is like the first thing to go in a bad economy. Is especially like a bad world economy. The first thing people cut, is their traveling. So none of this is a nice, diverse economy. It's very unhealthy, in my opinion. So, the other thing I wanted to mention is there's this cool map here, and if you look at where they're actually exporting, it's all pretty much the EU. So here's France, and then here's Spain, and Germany. Actually, Germany is this big green circle. So then they have, sure, a little in South Korea and the Middle East, Australia, but South America, even look at the U.S. They don't even export much to the U.S. or Canada or Mexico. Like, they are all Europe. So, and in here, it's, if you want to look at this Wikipedia article, I don't know where it is right now, but it's mentioned that they've grown really poorly over the last few years. Oh yeah, growth between 2012 and 2014, with the economy expanding by 0% in 2012, no gain. 0.8% in 2013, 0.2% in 2014. And then the growth started picking up in 2015 at 1.2% and 1.3% in 2016. It's on pace for 1.3% in 2017 and then 1.6% for 2018. They're projecting. So, they did struggle for a couple years, but they are starting to come back a little bit. And Germany is a very strong economy. That's why I don't think Germany would leave the EU. Like, Germany is the main beneficiary of the European Union in terms of, economic GDP. Of course, the people take a severe punishment for all of the immigrants they let in and pay for, and there's long-term sustainability problems there. But in terms of actual economy, the reason people like Merkel and have elected her like 5 times is because of the economy. And I think that's what you're going to see in France is, people are going to want to remain in the EU for economic reasons. So, overall, expect Le Pen to win or to lose, but it shouldn't be viewed as a failure, in my opinion. It should be viewed as, a message has been sent. The EU has to change, and if things in France don't change, the Nationalist Front, or whatever they call our party, is going to continue to grow. And Front National, they call it, party. So it's just going to continue to grow and become the number 1 party in France, and then they really will leave. But they do have the euro. I forgot to mention that. And going back to the franc would be costly. It would be far more suspect to investors. It'd be a far longer transition. It'd be a far more volatile. Like, look at the impact on the EU or on the UK economy short term, and now probably fivefold that for France. Like, they would probably, you know, I'm not, I guess I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if they went through a recession from leaving the EU, just because they depend on these European countries so much. And if they leave, the EU has been trying to strong arm the UK. So if they didn't give France a reasonable, France is a lot more susceptible to being strong armed than the UK, because the US can help the UK. There's a special relationship there, but France is more of a strictly European country. It's their alliances are completely dependent on Europe, and they're not really, as much as Macron wants to say worldwide, their power comes from being known worldwide, but they're not really politically allied well worldwide or militarily. So economically, it's all heavily dependent on France, and or on the EU. So anyways, that's all I have to say. Hopefully the elections turn out in our favor and Le Pen does win, but don't expect it. All right, have a good day.